The second argument on the side of pro-free trade is that free trade would come with it some additional benefits. So the additional benefits argument takes as given this efficiency argument and says, yes, we agree that these black triangles, if we can get those back to society, that would be great. But this efficiency argument doesn't capture anything. There are additional benefits, okay? And so if you have, so when an industry is protected from foreign producers, the number of domestic firms in that industry will be artificially high. Okay, so think of it this way. At this price, at PW, there are some firms in this industry that cannot compete. They need to be charging a higher price in order to make it efficient or profitable for them to operate. And if if the domestic price were to increase to this price up here, then all of a sudden those firms can actually stay in business and they can earn a profit. Okay, so the idea is that if an industry is protected from foreign producers with a tariff or any other restriction, then the number of domestic firms in that industry will be higher than it otherwise would be. And we call this artificially high because it's the result of the tariff. Okay, so we can use an example of this would be Argentina. Okay, so just to as a point of order, efficient, we'll say car production, and this is technically efficient, but that's fine. Efficient car production is between 80,000 and 200,000 cars per year. Producing less cars than this, so producing less than 80,000 cars per year, is going to require more per unit resources than producing somewhere in this range. Okay, and when we're talking about per unit resources, what we mean is the total cost divided by the quantity produced. Okay, so think about perhaps in like your garden. Okay, if you grow corn in your backyard, just kind of for fun, the per unit cost of that corn, or the cost per ear of corn, is probably going to be kind of high, right? Especially when you compare that to the per ear of corn cost of like a major corn farm with hundreds of thousands of acres or hundreds of acres of corn growing, where they have, where they have tractors, silos, all kinds of machinery and equipment designed to help uh, grow and harvest the corn. Okay, so your per unit cost of growing corn in your backyard is very high relative to the per unit cost of a major corn farm. Okay, so the same kind of thing can be done to car production. The per unit cost when you're producing less than 80,000 is much higher than it is if you're producing between 80,000 and 200,000. Okay, we call these economies of scale. Right? Which basically says that if you can ramp up your production to a higher volume, you can produce each unit at a lower cost. Right? It's easier for you to produce each individual unit. Okay, so if we look at the Argentinian car industry in 1964, so in 1964, when they had high tariffs on imported cars, there were 13 car companies in Argentina, and the total output of all was 166,000. Okay, now they're going to be producing at a lower value or lower volume than 80,000, which means they're using more per unit resources to produce their cars. Okay, and so the argument goes that by opening up free trade, or by removing tariffs, some of these 13 car manufacturers will go out of business. Okay, so that part is unfortunate for the worker, the companies and the workers there. Okay, but what it will do is it will reduce the per unit cost of a car, lowering the price in Argentina, not just because we've lowered the price down because we got rid of the tariff, but what it also will do is we can also model it as an increase in the supply of cars domestically, because each individual firm is now able to produce at a higher volume. Each of the remaining firms, I should say, will be producing at a higher volume, and they'll be more efficient in their production. Okay, so when we do that, the gains from opening up free trade are bigger than just these deadweight loss triangles. In fact, they would exceed the value of the deadweight loss triangles. Okay, so the idea is that when we open up free trade, not only do we gain in terms of the efficiency, where we gain back these deadweight loss triangles, but we might even see additional gains in the form of better technology and better productive capacities and better productive technologies, lowering the price of cars or whatever industry we're talking about even more. Okay, so the idea is that there are greater benefits than just those deadweight loss triangles. There's more to it than even that, right? And the people that worked at these car companies that go out of business, they'll be freed up to go do other things and produce other goods, which will just be tantamount to, so let's say this will be, all other goods in Argentina, right? So if we had workers who suddenly lost their jobs at one of those 13 car manufacturers that go out of business, they go and work in other industries, which just increases the supply for those, all right, and lowers the price for everyone else as well. Okay, so the idea is that there's more to international trade than just these deadweight loss triangles. There can be further benefits in the form of all other goods suddenly becoming cheaper as well. Okay, now admittedly, I've drawn the shift in supplies to be huge and massive. In reality, it would probably be significantly smaller, something more like that. Okay, but the point is that there would be an increase in the supply of all other goods. Everyone else would be free to do more things, right? And the price of all goods and services in the entire country would come down, making everyone wealthier because they can afford more things. Okay. Other arguments, in addition to the economies of scale thing, include things like sharing the knowledge of how to produce things. Okay, so if we allow imports to come into a country, we can take them apart and see how they work. And then we can learn from how other people have produced their products as well, and we can replicate it. Okay, so the idea behind the additional benefits argument is that there are additional benefits to just these deadweight loss triangles from free trade, both in the form of economies of scale and in the form of increased supply of all other goods and in the form of shared knowledge and shared productive abilities.